Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of QTube. And today we have all the way from, I believe you're in Nashville today, is Mr. Brian Falduto, country singer and professional coach. Brian, welcome to QTube.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm actually in Brooklyn.
You're in Brooklyn.
I'm in Brooklyn, but I'm hard to keep track of, so it's totally fair that you assume Nashville. I was in Nashville recently.
I thought so, and I didn't know if you were still in Nashville or if you had, because I know that you're living in New York.
Yes.
New York's it's interesting. There's so much happening in New York in so many different walks of life and genres. It's interesting. I'm always talking to somebody from New York. First of all, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
You are no stranger to music. You've been kind of out there doing your thing for a bit. You kind of started in more of I don't want to call it pop. I would call it a little bit more like adult contemporary or something like along that lines. But now you've kind of transitioned more so mainly into country. Is it fair to say gospel country?
Not the album that I'm currently working on, but the things I just released, sure. The album I'm currently working on is like country, which is fun for me because that's what I listen to the most, honestly. I love country music. I worked in country music radio for a while. Yeah, like my debut AP and stuff. I mean, I created that in my bedroom, so I think it was just missing a lot of elements, honestly. But at the heart, it's always been story songs. I just call my music story songs. It's always just like my story or me trying to tell a story, and I feel like the genre that fits story songs the best is country music. So I feel like there's been some sort of theme there as far as like how I tell story in song. But yeah, like the elements are definitely changing over time, especially like as I like understand my sound more and know how to like produce it. Because again, that first EP I was like just playing around in my room.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess that's a really great way to put it is like story songs. And country music does have that pedigree and that history of, you know, taking back the earliest kind of country with folk and country being mixed and always having, you know, a storyline to it. And yeah, the previous EP definitely had some gospel tinge to it, and which, you know, I think people get the wrong impression sometimes when they hear gospel. They think that it's going to be, you know, old time religion and that kind of thing, that it's going to be morose or it's going to be super, super heavy. But really, gospel in its you know, earliest formations was more about uplifting and the spirit involved. And that's what yours had, which I think I can totally appreciate.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I mean, I grew up in church, so I grew up listening to Christian contemporary music as like my main, I would say before country, that was my main genre. And I feel like that's an easy transition because country has a lot of songs about Jesus and whatnot, a lot of gospel feels in there. And yeah, I mean, my relationship with religion has changed a lot over the years, but my relationship with that kind of music hasn't. And I think it's like really cool how they're able to inspire with like the way they put their melodies together and their lyrics together. I think it's a really cool genre. And then yeah, I mean, I just released a song called God Loves Me Too, which is about my experience growing up gay in church, which is which is probably the most vulnerable song I've ever released, but it certainly has like a gospel element to it. We shot the video in a church, and I think I wanted to address like the younger me who struggled with being gay in church. So I think that it felt important that I like tie in aspects of church to the song, essentially.
I think there's so many young men and women out there who have had a similar kind of experience growing up in a rural area that is heavily I don't want to say controlled, that's not necessarily, but influenced definitely through religion and organized religion, and it becomes part of your way of life. I know myself from the area that I came from, very heavily influenced by specifically Catholic churches, and you know, I think that sometimes people think that to sing about it, it either has to be angst ridden, or, you know, like I had to deal with this when I was young, and certainly those stories are out there. And there are some folks who sing from a more of a not a negative, but you know, a challenge from their lives. Whereas yours was really about kind of pulling back the curtain a bit and saying, you know what, I have this relationship. It has been a struggle, but it's part of me and it's an important part of you. Um, I'm curious with the song, how it was received by various different audiences, and I'm sure you've had some great experiences, but I'm also curious, have there been the other side?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really happy you pointed that out because that was one of my big goals. I didn't want to make a song attacking the church or attacking anyone. I think that's how we change people, by attacking them. I think people are going to change in their own time if they want to change. So this song isn't really about creating change. The song was about pointing out options to people. I didn't know when I was younger that there were options to both have a relationship with God and be completely who I am authentically, right? I didn't know that that was an option, and I found that in my later life. So I really just wanted the song to be more about like, this is what I found to be true for myself, and offer that up to people if they like are looking for that option, because I feel like a lot of people don't know it exists because they are living in that strict the construct that you mentioned, and I'm all too familiar with that, having grown up in Catholic school and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, the response has been great for the most part. I mean, if people have a problem with it, I haven't heard too much about it. I've heard great messages from people who really resonated with the song. I don't read the comments. Apparently, I've heard that they're positive though. Like, I don't read the comments on the video. I've gotten a couple of like a Instagram post or something. I'll read those comments, and I've gotten a couple of like, someone would just drop like a Bible verse that tells me I'm a sinner or something like that, and it's just massively uninformed, so I just kind of shrug it off because I mean, I could get into it, but basically there's actually no proof that the word homosexual even entered the Bible before 1946, and it was just a mistranslation. So there's actually it's literally just people's homophobia infusing this teaching, which is ruining people's lives. So I mean, I get pretty passionate when I talk about it, but yeah, there's been a little bit of both sides of the coin. But I think people who have a problem with being gay in church aren't speaking up maybe as much as those who are like, no, this is what we're finding to be true, because I don't know, times are changing, and I feel like there's not as much room for hate anymore.
I've known a few young men and women who are very connected to their church, and whose sexuality, whether it's bi or gay, and there's even some trans individuals, and that has been a struggle for them. But they seem, well, I mean, they're young, so they're a little bit more resilient and maybe not so jaded. But how they're speaking about it is really positive. They're saying that I shouldn't have to sacrifice my love of church and my love of spirituality simply because I'm also, a different sexuality than most of the people who have been in this church before. And I think that, hopefully that's the starting point of some really good progress and change. They talk about how, church, we're losing people in the churches and that kind of thing. It's kind of like, and if ever we needed some miracles, this time in life we need some. But I'm curious, have you had many young people actually reach out to you with that kind of thing?
Yeah, and I had the pleasure of having the song be selected as the official theme song of this organization called Beloved Arise, which is basically, I don't know if you're familiar with the Trevor Project, but the Trevor Project is like a affirming organization for youth in crisis, right? So the Beloved Arise is similar, but it's specifically for religion. So basically any youth who is out there and feels ostracized by their church community or any religious community and wants to find a home, Beloved Arise is creating that space for people. And it's like a really cool organization. And I sang the song at their Queer Youth of Faith Day, which happened in June. And I got to hear all these amazing stories from all these youth who, I mean, I get emotional just thinking about it because it was all these young kids who basically have already found the truth that took me 26 years to find. They know that they can be who they are and that they can also have a relationship with religion. And it was just like, so I was like, whoa, this is cool. I mean, right now the world's not always cool, but I think that the world could be really cool one day if these are the people that are coming next.
I completely agree with you. I think I think that those stories and experiences are really important to let other people know about, but they're very effective to us because we didn't have that space when we were younger. So when we see them, I'm always kind of like, this is so cool. I'm like, I want to go back and be like 17 again. Not totally, but
Yeah.
So country music is where you're landing, and your new music that's coming out, you said already, is going to be country music. Tell me, tell us a little bit about kind of what you're working on and what's coming down the pike in a way.
Yeah, I'm in the very, very early phases of an album that I'm hoping to call Gay Country, will be the name of it. And I think that it just kind of all naturally evolved, you know? I mean, a lot of my music for a long time was me getting things out that I needed to get out because I was in a tough place, you know, coming out of the closet and then like getting into rough relationships and, you know, figuring out who I am as a gay man in the church, all the things we mentioned, right? Like just, music was kind of like my way of finding my voice for a while. I feel like I've done a lot of healing and I'm like, generally happy for the most part, you know, like I'm happy with who I am and I'm happy with my voice. And so what's fun about that is I'm starting to just free up tunes that come out of me that, you know, I have a song on there that's about drinking. I have a song on there that's about like, it's called the Big Boys Club. It's all just about like dating and like having fun, but like not in like a hurt way, you know? So it's gonna just be a really fun album, which I'm excited about because I've never really done that before. There's always been a touch of like heartache in there, like please listen to me, which is important. I think music needs to be that sometimes, but right now I'm just like kind of seeing what comes out and it's kind of fun.
Awesome. Who do you draw from country music? Are you an old school like Waylon, Willie, Tammy Wynette, or are you more known like new Keith Urban kind of?
I'm like in between. I'm like 5 or 10 years ago country. I love 90s country, first of all, but also, I mean, I grew up on Rascal Flatts, you know, so they're like a big influence for me, Zac Brown Band. So like all the artists that were like, I would say the bulk of country music radio like 5 or 10 years ago, I don't really know who's on country music radio right now, but sometimes I'll turn it on and I'll be like, it's a lot of it is a little more like a little more poppy than I want to be. I have a little bit of like a folk sound to my voice, so I kind of love listening to like John Michael Montgomery, for example. He's got like, you know, like a really laid back tone. I think some current artists who are doing that is like Chris Young or like Josh Turner. You know, I definitely have like a deep resonant sound. So I'm trying to like find ways to be fun about that in music where it could, but it's still kind of chill. I don't know. I'm pretty chill for the most part, so I want that to be in my music as well, you know. This album's fun because I'm kind of just like figuring out what I want it to be. So.
Ty Herndon had out that song recently, and then he redid it as kind of like a dance song, and it just kind of made me kind of stop my tracks a bit. And I think, you know, just kind of thinking to myself, I'm like, here's a man who is, you know, doing quite well in country music and then comes out and still doing well in his own kind of way. And I know that it was a little bit of a step back for country music. I mean, they just weren't used to it. But then to flip it right on its ear and like, let's just do a dance remix to it. I was kind of like, that's what's cool about what's happening here, is that you would never have expected that and or thought that you would see it. Or if it did happen, it would have been done completely different. I'm wondering, have you had much contact with any of the other kind of like out country artists that are out there?
Yeah, Cameron Hawthorne and I were on a bill together recently, and I did some writing with Paisley Fields recently, and a couple other folks that I can't think of at the moment. I get to meet Ty, but I think people do forget that he was a bit of a trailblazer there, right? Because he, you know, I feel like he was kind of the subject of some cancel culture there for a moment, but he's really finding his footing again in like a cool way. And so, yeah, if I ever get to meet him, I will definitely thank him for paving the way. I've been in touch with him like through his manager, but I've never like met him. I think he's great. Yeah. Brandon Stansel is also doing some cool stuff at the moment too. And then there's like the bigger names, you know, there's Lil Nas and Brandy Carlisle, and they're doing cool things. Brandy Carlisle is finally getting the attention she's always deserved. And yeah, I mean, it's so cool to see that there are so many people kind of like doing this queer country thing. And yeah, I just hope I get to meet more of them and collaborate more with them. I think I'm going back and forth with this guy named River Weston at the moment too. Hoping to do some writes together. Yeah.
River is a dream. So River was, I've been speaking with River for a number of times because he's such an old soul. You know, he loves the Ricky Nelson era of music, and he really like dives into that. Young Spanish or Chilean singer that just recently came out, Florian Rose, also does that same kind of thing. So it's great, and I love seeing that crossover of where it's, you know, somebody who's maybe normally thought of as a pop artist, but understands that tradition, that history of old style music, and be able to kind of bring it in. So I'm excited for you to be able to kind of sit and do some writing with River.
Yeah, me too.
I'm curious from your standpoint, so I'm very, I don't want to use the word fascinated, but I'm really kind of focused these days on genres that have been kind of sidelined in a way from the LGBT community, and country is definitely one of them, where people, you know, didn't think that there was country artists, but totally there is, of course, country artists, and in every country probably. But I'm curious, from your standpoint and for what you've been involved in and who you've been talking with, how are you finding the inner workings and I guess the temperature of reception, I guess, for queer artists in country music?
Yeah, it's definitely interesting in the LGBTQ spectrum, right? Because like I book a lot of like pride performances and pride festivals. Like that's kind of like my niche. But what's funny is a lot of those pride festivals and performances want like EDM artists or like drag artists or DJs, because it's like such a high intensity event, like a high energy event. And so like, but I think my show is really fun, you know, like it's a honky tonk blast, you know, we have a good time up there. So I think, yeah, there is like a little bit of, sometimes I feel like the LGBTQ community isn't exactly like turning on country as much as I am. But I mean, there's also like this, I think there's also like a lot of people who do love country music, who have felt alienated for a while. And it's almost like, well, if you're not going to let us in, we'll just kind of do our own thing. And I feel like there's this country music that's happening as noted by the CMAs, for example. And then there's this like undercurrent of like country music that's like, you know, like a little like cooler with like more eclectic people and more eclectic stories, that's like being like, well, we're just going to keep doing this anyway. And I feel like what's fun is occasionally like the larger organization of country will like pick up an artist from there, or will like come down and work with an artist in this undercurrent. And it's like, it's cool. And I think hopefully one day we can just have like a country music community that is all inclusive. But I think at the moment it's still hard because I know women are still even clawing their way into the genre, right? So and I mean, I just feel like they have a long way to go before they're like super inclusive of all different groups. And I do think it's funny that there is such a gap between LGBTQ community, the LGBTQ community and country music, because country music is all about stories, as I mentioned, and there's so many rich stories in the LGBTQ community. I mean, there's such a heritage there. There's so many stories that need to be told, first of all, so that representation can be out there, and then just like really powerful, impactful stories, because that I think would affect people. So I hope the two can merge more.
I do too. I mean, you kind of mentioned like where the industry kind of comes down or picks up an artist and kind of picks them out. Orville Peck kind of being one of those kinds of artists where, I mean, he's wearing a mask with fringe, which typically isn't seen in country music. Fringe maybe, but you know, it's kind of interesting, and he's got that sound that's so old old country. But that's kind of becoming a phenomenon. I hope that it continues to kind of grow to that. I was talking to some artists recently about acts like Trixie Mattel, who has a country bend to their music, and the music is fantastic. But of course, drag and country drag is again another type of just presence that isn't necessarily always seen. But then you listen, if you can listen to the music and where it's coming from, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you've had any kind of experiences where you've seen that kind of happening within the industry or within certain sectors of country music.
Where I've seen what happened. Sorry, I think I made a mess up.
The merging of drag and country.
Yeah, Trixie Mattel is a good example. I love drag, but I'm not as caught up on it as I should be. I am an old soul, so I'm off like listening to old artists all the time. But I think there's a need for that too. One of my favorite quotes is from Hannah Gadsby in her special, and she's like, "Where do all the quiet gays go?" So I feel like there's a lot of old souls in the queer community that just need like the like simple music as well. So it's like I don't know, but I've heard some of Trixie Mattel's stuff, and I think it's really cool. I watched We're Here, and I think it's amazing.
And yeah, I mean, it's. I think it just kind of shows the breadth of progress and change that's kind of happening out there. It's not happening widespread, but it's starting, and it's important to kind of like keep on top of that. I think to hopefully cultivate it more so that more can happen. So with your new music kind of coming out, what are you hope? Well, I get it's weird. It's hard to ask artists this right now, and I feel it's ugly to ask it about like what are your future plans, especially being in the United States because you're impacted so much by what's kind of happening. But from the standpoint of even just releasing, has what is happening with COVID and everything like that changed your plans for releasing or how you're releasing or how often?
I'm going to release a single in September that's been in my pocket for a little while. I'm an independent artist, so I've always kind of felt like a freedom to release music how I want to. I think COVID, in a lot of ways, as an artist, for me, has just given additional freedom. For example, like I think that I'm an introvert and I'm a creative, so the more time I can get, just like me, myself, and I, is like honestly good for my craft. And COVID, although it's a terrible thing for the world, obviously, kind of gifted me a lot of time to like brew this album. So, I mean, yeah, I'd be curious what the world will be like when I release it, because I'm hoping it'll be like a fun album for fun times. So we'll see. I did release. Actually, I did have that trouble actually though, because I released "God Loves Me Too" in June at the height of the Black Lives Matter movement, and at the height of COVID. So it was really difficult. We put it off for a little while because we were like, there's too much in the news, and then we were like, well, now everyone's just sitting home, so maybe this is a good time to release it. And then the Black Lives Matter movement exploded, and I was like, I think that this messaging really needs to be amplified right now, and then my messaging can maybe wait. And so it was about finding the right timing, and yeah, we ended up releasing it right after that bill was passed that about LGBTQ discrimination, and it just felt like a positive moment in our culture, and so we were like, it's a positive song, right, about everyone being loved and accepted within the community.
So I'm curious about your other craft, which is coaching. And you've been out there, and I'm curious how you got into that, and kind of like, are you using it with your music in kind of a way? Are you working with some artists, or is it kind of separate from that?
Yeah, I think I mentioned that my music was like my way of kind of like self-healing and finding my voice for a while, but I like didn't really elaborate on the fact that I needed healing in the first place. I was in like a tough place for a long time. My relationship with myself wasn't very good. I think that happens with a lot of people who spend a lot of time in the closet. You know, I was very disassociated from myself, and then I came out and I felt like this like pressure to like speed up my life and be this like gay man, right? And then I feel like I didn't really know what that was or what that would look like for me. So there was a lot of like shame there that I was just kind of building upon, and it was a very toxic time for me. And I kind of reached like a dark point, which music helps me out of. But I got really curious about how one goes improving that relationship with themselves, because it was kind of like missing for me for a long time. And so I kind of just like embarked on this mindfulness journey of like exploring that for myself. And I don't know if you've ever like been on a mindfulness journey, but it gets a little addictive after a while. I feel like there's so much out there that you can like use to kind of like fix these narratives or these things you've been telling yourself your whole life that like don't really serve you. And I don't know, I just got really excited about like positivity and like being happy with who you are and what you're putting out there, and believing in yourself, like all the cliches, right? But I was finding authentic ways to access all those things, and I was like, I want to help other people do this because I feel really empowered for the first time in my life. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into coaching.
I find a lot of artists that I've talked to, they and I've mentioned coaching to them before. I have friends who are coaches. I've been through coaching myself, and you know, they misconstrue it sometimes as therapy, and I'm like, no. I'm like, when you're stuck and you need somebody to help you see through some things and figure out why it is that you're stuck. That's kind of more from where coaching kind of comes from, to kind of get you to ask those questions to yourself and dig deeper into, you know, what is it that's stopping you? What is it that's, you know, getting in your way, and that kind of thing? How can you get rid of those blocks? Have you worked with any artists?
Yeah, I have a couple artists in my client roster. And that is actually a very good way of putting it. There's a lot of confusion between coaching and therapy. Coaching is very goal focused. Therapy is more like, let's see why we're here. You know, it's a little bit more delving into the past and exploring the present. Whereas I feel like coaching is more present to future, if that makes sense. So yeah.
Yeah, and again with the artists too, it's kind of like, I think that if they can figure out that there is a difference, they're more likely to kind of come around to it, because most of the things that they're having problems with and struggles with, coaching could probably like help them with.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I think that the creative space that a lot of artists live in is, oh gosh, I hope I don't get in trouble for saying this, but this is just my thoughts on it all, is a beautiful space to be. And I think that's why we make such good artists, right? Because we're storytellers in that creative space. But that creative space doesn't always come with a goal-oriented mindset and or a way to carry that creative space out. So I don't think it's like shameful to admit that maybe an artist needs help with that. I think that there's a business side to the industry too, and that's difficult to navigate. My artist side actually came out later. I was always like a little bit more high maintenance about like business stuff. I worked in radio. I got an arts administration degree. So I think one of the reasons I've been like a semi-successful artist is because I'm good at the business side of things as well. Like I know how to pitch myself, and I know like you know, from working in radio, I know what people are maybe like looking for. And I just know that like there has to be a balance of the two brains. Like the creative space is important and it needs to be brewed, and like you need to create time for that. But then you also need to spend time with literally a different part of your brain, mapping out, okay, what am I gonna do with all this creativity now? Like what are the steps I'm gonna take, if that makes sense? I don't know. Yeah. But I don't want to criticize anyone's artistic approach.
No, I think you're right. I think that when the creative side can be, I think it can be overpowering to other things, because the creative output, you want to get things out, you want to get things written, you want to get them out to other people so that you can then start to see if they're being received. And there is that whole business side of it that maybe comes as an afterthought or secondary thought sometimes, because as an artist, you're never really kind of set up to also be a business person. And there's a little bit of navigation around that with a career in art. I think not everybody's fortunate to have a manager that says, okay, I'm going to take care of the business or whatnot. A lot of the do-it-yourself and independent artists have to be the whole kit and caboodle themselves.
I'm pretty positive that my band members follow me because I'm good at the business side of it. They just know that if I say I'm gonna do something, that I'm likely gonna do it, because like I'm good at like setting up goals for myself and getting there, like from the business side of things. And I feel like artists want to work, so I feel like if I have this band behind me that wants to work, you know, I'm gonna get us the opportunities, whether I deserve them or not.
You may have a third career already in the making right here. It's just business guys. So music, coaching, what's the dream? Where do you want to get to? What's the dream for Brian Falduto?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to. I've been thinking about that a lot during COVID. You know, I'm still an actor, and I occasionally do projects in that realm, and I'm wondering how much that serves me anymore and how much it brings me joy. I love music, and I don't see myself giving that up anytime soon. And there's a lot of coaching energy that I output, and then music takes its own energy, as I mentioned. So I'm trying to just get very clear about the direction of my energy at the moment. And I don't know, I think that there's a space to be putting out mindfulness in music. One of the reviews of my music once was that my songs have an unusual amount of introspection, perhaps a result of his work as a life coach. And I think that if I can live in that space where I'm putting out my introspective journey in a way that's fulfilling for me, and then helping other people kind of talk to themselves better and put that out there, that would kind of be my dream. And I mean, I'm doing that in like two separate assets at the moment. I'd love to merge them a little bit more. Like a singular Queer Eye show for myself would be a great thing.
That's awesome.
You know?
I would say that listening to not even just God Loves Me Too, but some of the other music that you've had out recently, I would agree with that I think your music, and this is maybe a broad sweeping kind of thing, but from what I got from it, your music and how you're presenting the stories gives the listener permission to want to know more about themselves.
I love that. Can I write that down?
You certainly may. Where most of the time, I think, music is, and I don't think necessarily the artist does this, but music is kind of put out where the output, the input that we're getting from it will be kind of like, this is the story, this is what happened, yada, yada, yada. It's very much kind of like that, where there's almost in your music right now that you've been creating, there's a stop partway through that kind of turns it around on you and asks the question, which is really interesting, because I don't think we use music for so many different forms, but I think for anybody who's listening to your music, I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah, and I think if I'm doing that successfully, the only way I'm doing it is by asking myself really authentic questions and trying to bring that out of me into my music. Again, I don't ever write from the goal of creating an impact or making a change. If that happens, that's awesome. But I think the best way to do that is really just being honest with what's coming up for me, which is really the real challenge, right? So yeah, but I'm trying, again, this next album's fun, so that's new for me, but I'm hoping that within the fun, we can still ask some cool questions, you know?
And you're hoping for a September-ish single release?
I'm really thinking that song's been in the pocket for a while. It's very introspective. It's beautiful. It's about my relationship with the stars. It's a love letter to the stars and how much I love them. And then the Gay Country album won't be out for a little while, but I'll be having fun with it in the meantime.
That's awesome. All right, here's the challenging question.
Okay.
Dream collaboration. Who would you work with? Who would you want to work with?
Yeah. Well, right now I have my eyes set on working with Victoria Shaw if she's listening, just because I know her production history and I feel like we'd be good together. But she, as far as like artists, I mean, she is an artist. I feel like she's more in the producing realm these days, which is why I mentioned that. But artists, I mean, I'm going to be pretty like, perhaps not very original, but I'm going to say Casey Musgraves, because I mean, she's just brilliant. She really is.
She's brilliant.
She does such a good job at doing exactly what I want to do. Really simple lyrics that like anyone should be able to think of, but yet no one's able to think of them except for her. And then she submits them on top of melodies that are perfectly pleasurable to the ear. But then underneath the melodies are all these like cool elements that you weren't expecting. So it's really everything I want to do as an artist. So I think her music's fantastic.
Awesome. Well, listen, this has been fantastic. This has been a great chat. Get to know so much more about you. But before
You too.
we sign off, you have a single out called God Loves Me Too with video. That's out currently. You're looking at another song somewhere around September. There's a gay country album coming, and you have your coaching. So there's so much that people need to kind of check out about you. And I'm super excited to see what comes next.
Thank you so much for having me. I love the account and thank you for including me in this. And yeah, everyone should go check it out. I'm Brian Falduto on Instagram, and The Gay Life Coach is my other Instagram.
And we're going to link that all to this video and everything else.
Great.
Awesome. Thank you, Brian, for joining us on QTube, and we'll talk again very, very soon.